Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Carly. I'm a mixed media artist that specializes in gouache paint and ink. And sometimes I do digital art. This is part of my Game of Shrooms series. Game of Shrooms is a worldwide mushroom-themed art scavenger hunt. And on June 11th, artists hide their artwork everywhere around their local area and post online the hiding spots for people to find. Follow me if you would like to know more. Anyways, this is another video explaining my process behind this mushroom painting featuring a raccoon and an extra couple of eyeballs because, you know, if you know, you know. In the last few videos, I explained my process behind creating the fur. In this video, I'll be explaining the process behind painting the nose, the mouth, and the eyes on this raccoon. Matching the lighting with the fur, I used a lot of blue for the highlights on the nose. Noses on animals like dogs or raccoons in this case, they have a wet looking nose, and it's actually really fun to paint or draw. It's also a lot more simple than you would think. Right now, I am blocking out all of the deep shadows, straight up just using black because honestly I don't want to get too complicated with it. And anywhere there's going to be highlights, I am placing blue and blending that out to be a very soft gradient. After that, I'm grabbing white and I'm placing that in areas where there's a high point of highlight. This will add to the wet effect. Building this up in layers, and I am blending out the very edges with my very tiny brush. I like a lot of contrast in my paintings, so I tend to build up these highlight layers pretty drastically. Made the comparison between raccoon noses and dog noses, and I would just like to say raccoon noses are a little bit easier to paint because they're not as textured as a dog nose. Dog noses tend to have more of a leathery appearance to them. Raccoons still have that, but they're still somewhat smooth compared to dogs. They also have a different nose shape where the nostrils on the top are more narrow than the area at the bottom of the nose, whereas dogs' nostrils at the top flare out wider than the bottom. I would also like to note there's some highlights on the under left side of the nose, almost like a rim light that you can still see a glimpse of the shape of the raccoon's nose, even though it's not getting hit by that direct, intense highlight as much. I am adding white there just to sharpen it up a bit so that the shape of the raccoon nose doesn't get lost within the really dark shadow. Once I blend it out, that will be muted quite a bit. It won't be such a harsh white line. And then at the final layers of the really intense highlight, I go in with a lot more white paint than to water ratio, so a lot more pigment. And I'm going to be placing that in areas where the highlights are really blinding, like the very top of the nose, as well as that little bit of light that is caught right underneath the nostril. Because that area flares out more on a raccoon, it catches more light. Paying attention to small little highlights and details like that really makes it look a lot more dimensional. Now we're doing the tongue. I got a very dark mauve color and I'm just tracing the contours of the tongue. So first thing I did was draw a line down the tongue, and then where there's a deeper shadow in the back of the tongue, I am placing that a lot more heavy-handed. And then there was also a little bit of a dip in the tongue because he's opening his mouth and his tongue is kind of like scooping up. And I placed some of that mauve color there. And then I am placing some white just to block out where the highlights are going to be going and to create a general contour for the tongue. Count how many times I say nose, tongue, and eyes in this video. And then I am blending that out with a damp brush. You'll see later on in the video, I end up getting a little too excited to put down highlights, and I end up making the tongue a little bit too pale. And yeah, that's what's happening right here. I'm like, okay, that's good. And then I put in the highlights, but then I looked back at it and was like, you know what? This is too pale. I wanted more color. and I wound up adding back in some red watercolor pencil and lightly blending that out, as well as some yellow, just to give it back some warmth, and it wasn't like super cool toned looking. I think it just blended in with the shadows a little bit too much. Sometimes I just zone out and I'm blending too much, and no. Okay, it's so funny watching back the footage because I know exactly what I was thinking while I was painting this. I got really tired of painting the tongue because I couldn't really put my finger on it, like what was annoying me about it. I know now it was the fact that it was too pale and cool toned for me, and I kept trying to work on it, and then I just bounced around on other areas of the painting because I was getting distracted, and also I was just getting fed up with the tongue. I just wanted to keep the momentum going. That is something I do with my paintings and drawings a lot. If there's one specific area that's giving me some issues, I just bounce around the whole other area of the painting besides the area that's giving me problems, because I need to keep the momentum going. If I fixate too much on a problem, I'm more likely to become not very motivated. And with pieces like this that take a while, and especially if they have a deadline, I have to keep myself motivated. Sometimes I get tired of a painting altogether and I won't look at it for a week, so do with that what you will. Here I am trying to fix it with more yellow. The yellow ain't working, girl. You gotta put in red. Now he looks like a sick raccoon. Oh my god. More highlights, because I think that's just gonna fix it. And then I'm like, you know what? Let's just work on the teeth and the lips, or whatever you call that on a raccoon. And then I was like, more wispies. That'll fix everything. Yeah, I don't know. I was just searching for the dopamine, man. The teeth were giving me issues too, because I wanted to really... I just love adding little undertones and adding color in between shadows. I love using color. And the teeth, they're so tiny. I was like, how am I going to add like a core shadow to these teeth? They're literally so small. For reference, this whole painting is it's an 8x10 piece of illustration board. So this area that I'm working with is literally smaller than my pinky nail. I wound up getting frustrated with the teeth as well as the tongue, and I just decided we're gonna keep them solid white for now and figure that out later. That's a later me problem, right? Here you can see I'm experimenting and troubleshooting by adding more pink but making it more warm toned with some yellow orange situation mixed in, and that kind of contrasts with the shadow behind the tongue in the back of his mouth. And then I decided, you know what, this just needs more pigment overall, so I just straight up added more of a red color rather than orange, because I realized that yellowy look, it ain't doing it. It ain't doing it. And then I got the right idea. I was like, alright, now we're on the right track. Sometimes you just gotta experiment, man. And there I am adding highlights back in, because I was like, yep, this is it. That's good. You know, to other people, maybe that looked like not that big of a difference, but to me, it made every difference ever. So now we're doing the eyes. We're doing raccoon eyes. Alright, so raccoon eyes are very dark, and I pretty much just filled it in completely with black. Was that a good idea? I don't know. It wasn't like a terrible idea. Not the most efficient way I could have done this, but I did it and it worked. So here we are. I filled it in with black, and then where there's going to be a highlight, which I changed my mind about that later, I put a little bit of white, and that just turned into dark gray because gouache. Which isn't an issue. Layers, man. Reason why I blacked them out was because raccoon eyes are very dark, and their eyelids are very tiny. They have the tiniest, thinnest eyelids ever, and I had to use the tiniest brush ever. And they also have very, 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 very tiny tear ducts. So as you can see, this is a struggle and a half. I'm putting white gouache down to really carve out those details. And then this is where I changed my mind. I was like, brown. Brown. I wanted there to be some color in the eyes. I wanted it to be very warm and inviting and cute because look at that little face. So I'm adding some brown, and I go back and forth with this a lot because I really wanted there to be a warm, almost like a glow within with the brown eyes. You know when brown eyes go into the sunlight and it looks like pools of honey? That's kind of the look I'm going for. And you know what? I'm not certain if Raccoon Eyes actually do that, if they're that reflective in color, but I don't care because it's what I want with my art, so I'm doing it. What I've seen online, they sometimes do in very direct sunlight, and I do plan on there being a glowing effect with the third eye, and that light would be pretty intense and golden and reflect down, so hypothetically it could be realistic, but let's not get ahead of ourselves because first of all, who cares? I'm taking creative freedom with that. I'm making a choice, and I mean, raccoons don't have a third eye that we know of. So again, I cannot underline this enough. The struggle of trying to get that upper lid and lower lid perfect. Oh my god. Oh my god. I'm like reliving this frustration watching this as I'm recording this. But yeah, I had to do a lot of messing around with the eyelids with my tiny detail brush, and I wound up... Okay, here's the issue I had with it. This is still educational, right? I hope it is. Every time I tried adding a little bit of a highlight in the very center of the eye on the upper lid and lower lid to give a rounded effect to the eyes, it looks good. And then I went to blend it out because gouache, and then it's such a tiny small area that I couldn't blend it the perfect amount so that it looked like a smooth highlighted gradient across. It always either looked choppy, or I wound up just smushing all the color back in, making the eyelids too thick, and then having to readjust it. Like, see, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm like, well, I readjusted that, and now I have to go back and add black underneath that upper eyelid because now it's too thick from me trying to add too many fancy highlights because I have a problem. So what did I do? I ignored it. And then this, as you can see, is when I decided brown. I'm gonna stop trying to do that center highlight the way I was trying to do against very dark eyes, and I just began adding brown to the eyes. And then I added highlights to see, like, does this look finished? Does this look as finished as I want it to be? No, it doesn't. The highlights are great, but when you add splotchy highlights like that and the gradients aren't as immaculate as they could be and the color transitions aren't as soft as I would like them to be, it feels like it doesn't have as much depth to it. So, we're gonna ignore our problems and work on the third eye now. So what I did was I basically made a gradient in the third eye of a black outline and then a very light brown in the center. And then on the whites of the third eye, I made it red because when I put down red for the tear ducts, I want it to seamlessly blend into a off-white color. So by making the base color red makes that transition easier. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I wound up adding more red in the corners later on, but it worked. I mean, it worked. As you can see, I am doing what I did earlier with the tongue, where I just kind of bounce around between the eyes and different areas around it to just, I don't know, have something more finished to compare the eyes to. Sometimes that helps, like this area has this amount of depth, so it makes the area that I'm working on easier to see, like what the problem is, or it just makes identifying how I can add more depth easier. And here I'm adding white to the whites of the eyes. I'm also adding a very golden color to the raccoon's actual eyes. And so far I'm loving it. Adding more color made it better to me. So yeah, again with that red, I'm like, somehow red-orange is curing my problems I'm having. So that looks good so far, yeah. And I'm blending that out and then muddying it up, and then I fix it and then I blend it again, and it's a whole process. Then I used a lighter orange to really get that effect I'm going for. Much better. It looks so much better. So much better. It still is pretty dark like a raccoon's eyes are, but that little halo of golden brown, I love it. I love it. That is the depth I was looking for, man. And I'm doing essentially the same exact thing to the third eye. The longer that you work on something, and the more you try pushing the values, the depth of a piece, it just makes it look so much more finished. And I just keep adding that honey color in the very center of where I made that gradient with the blood orange color previously to really make it pop against that black outline of the eyes. It really gives that halo effect. I'm so happy. And then I overdo it. Alright, I just keep going. I keep doing too much. That's okay. We're gonna ignore that and it's fine. I think my reasoning for just continuing to work on this gradient is because with gouache, when you blend things, they tend to just mix together, especially if you're working in such a concentrated, small area of a painting, and I really wanted the colors to be vibrant but seamlessly blend with each other, so I'm doing a lot of layers in between of that red, orange, gold, and I'm just trying to figure out and adjust to make it look as smooth as I wanted it to. I'm adding red to the tear ducts and the waterline of the third eye, then going in with a damp, tiny brush to blend out the very edges of that. I like making the third eyes a little bit irritated looking. I don't know why, I just like it. And I made that orange halo in the iris of the third eye as well. I made it a little bit lighter than the raccoon's eyes because it's going to be emitting light later on. And I changed my mind to make it do that later on. That will be in another video when I actually make the beam of light coming out of it. I went on TikTok and asked for critique, and people said the third eye should be glowing. Okay, short story time. So basically what happened was, while I was painting this, I stopped and realized, oh, so you know how at the very beginning of the video I had the raccoon's eyes blank and white? Yeah, that was because I forgot. I was going to be making the raccoon's eyes glowing white, and I just got in the flow state of painting, and I had these completed beautiful raccoon's eyes, and I was like, what did I do? I was just in the flow state and kept painting, and I had these very detailed pain in the eyes that I did, and I was like, this wasn't what it was supposed to be. How did I do this for hours and not even remember what my original plan was? Oh my god. Okay, so yeah. I made a TikTok and was like, help, do I go over the eyes? Do I make them white and glowing again? Do I go back? Do I undo all the work I did? And basically, the majority of the vote was just keep the raccoon's eyes, they look good, make the third eye glowing, and emit some light. And well, at that point, I had already finished the detail work in the third eye too. And I decided, you know what, that's a good idea though. I'm gonna listen to TikTok, and at the end of this painting, after I'm done with the ballpoint border and doing the mushroom and all that, I'm going to add a glowing beam from the third eye because that makes the most sense. It does, and I like that idea and it makes sense. So thank you to everyone on TikTok. I really appreciated it, and the comments were so nice, you guys, and were so helpful. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome, and I love you, and thank you so much. At this point, I wanted to add even more highlights, but you know what? It's such a small area. I wound up just doing 2 little dots for each tear duct, doing a tiny little highlight on the water line. I end up adjusting that later on, but whatever. And then once I get this gradient right on the iris, because I kept going back and forth and messing it up and overthinking it, I add a giant highlight in the center of the eyeball, and it's glorious, and I'm happy with it. I am so happy with it. I'm doing that whole thing I did previously where I overblend, and I'm like, oops, gotta add that paint back in because gouache. But it ends up looking good, and I'm so happy with it, and I can't wait for this piece to be done and to make prints of it and hide it all over my local area in Washington State, and for Game of Shrooms to happen and for people to find their copy of this raccoon print.
Hell yeah.
If you guys are interested in joining the hunt June 11th for Game of Shrooms, and if you're in Washington State in the Puget Sound area, follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and I don't know, if you're on Facebook, I have a Facebook too. I will be updating my hiding spots, and if you find one, you get to keep it. I will also be doing a painting like this in the series of a possum and also one of a skunk. Oh my god, I don't have that much time. I need to get it together, girl. The possum and the skunk paintings are going to have mushrooms as well, and third eyes, obviously. Do you guys even know me by now? Come on. And they're all going to be 8 by 10 inches. And the prints I'll be hiding will be 8 by 10 inches as well. I'll also be hiding some postcard size 4 by 6 inch prints too. But anyways, I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. And I will see you in next week's video. And next week's video is going to be of me painting the mushroom finally. And yeah. Anyways, bye!